Hello my fellow oddities and welcome to a new video. One of the staples of not only fighting games, but games in general is the final boss, the last hurdle, the toughest test for the player to get through. And for Mortal Kombat, the final boss is one of the most iconic parts of each and every installment. So today I'll be going through all 8 of Mortal Kombat's final bosses from every game in order of worst to best. In each game they were final boss, I will explain their lore, their difficulty, and my personal thoughts on them as a final boss. So without further ado, let's begin with the worst final boss from the Mortal Kombat franchise, Kano. Kano. Yes, Kano was the final boss of one Mortal Kombat game. The one famous for all the wrong reasons, Mortal Kombat Special Forces. The game takes place before the first Mortal Kombat, where Kano breaks out his Black Dragon comrades and Jack seeks to capture them back and stop them from taking an ancient crystal from Outworld that's able to transport people to other realms. But Kano does manage to find the crystal, and after Jax goes through the Black Dragon, he finds Kano in Outworld, and this is where the final boss battle takes place. As for the boss fight itself, like with most battles in this game, it can be sort of tough to get going, especially with Kano since he has this homing knife throw move. Not really sure how that works, but okay. But once you get him stunned, it's wraps. Whether it's with your machine gun or you just get close and start punching him up, you've won the fight at that point. Now, as just a character overall, Kano is cool, but as a boss specifically in this game, he's pretty terrible. He has no aura or intimidation, he's very easy to beat, and the story for how and why he's here is horrible. Kano as a side villain? Great, love him. As the main villain, well, just like in Mortal Kombat Legends Snowblind, it doesn't work for me. Now moving on to the characters that feel like true final bosses, starting off with Chronica. The fact that it was actually hard for me to decide, who's a worse final boss? The random thug or the Keeper of Time and more powerful than the Elder Gods, Titan? That just tells you how much I hate Chronica. Chronica is a Titan, who are somehow more powerful than the Elder Gods, despite the fact that the Elder Gods, alongside the One Being, were the only things that existed before the universe began. In fact, it was their battle that created the Big Bang. And Titans didn't exist yet, so I'm not really sure how that works. Chronica is the mother of Shinnok and Cetrion, and she is the Keeper of Time, the one who tries to manipulate the destinies of all the characters and the realms. However, when Raiden sends a message back in time to his past self and begins changing the timeline, Chronica intervenes and begins her mission to restart time back to the beginning as a do-over of the timeline, this time with no Raiden. She summons villains and heroes from the past and brings them to the present and allies herself with those who also feel screwed over by Raiden's actions. She retrieves the crown she needs to restart time and is ultimately successful in doing so. However, in order to craft her new timeline, she has to go through Fire God Liu Kang, and this is when the boss battle begins. Chronica is not difficult, just annoying. Once you play through the game enough times, she becomes easy to deal with, but no less frustrating. She has so many damn near unavoidable attacks with her time energy fireballs that will track you down and hit you, the T-Rex move, the one where she freezes you, and to make it worse, throughout the fight, she will summon a character for you to fight, and attacking them doesn't decrease her health bar. Chronica is eventually defeated, and Liu Kang crafts the new timeline we see in Mortal Kombat 1. I hate Chronica so much. Her very existence is a direct contradiction to so much of Mortal Kombat's lore and plotlines, and those sacrifices they make in order to make her work, they don't actually do anything with. What's the point of her being stronger than the Elder Gods if she needs so much help and basically does nothing herself? Her voice, her smug confidence is so annoying, not intimidating at all, and her design is giving Apple product vibes. Next boss we have is Dark Kahn from Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe. After Mortal Kombat 2, Shao Kahn is sent through a portal by Raiden, and at the exact same time in another universe, Darkseid is sent through a boom tube by Superman. This results in the two universes merging, and Shao Kahn and Darkseid becoming one. Now named Dark Kahn, the fusion influences the Mortal Kombat and DC heroes and villains to battle using the Combat Rage, increasing his power. But when Superman and Raiden team up to stop him, that's when we get the final battle. In terms of difficulty, he is tough, but a moderate challenge compared to the more cheap tactics of other bosses like spamming and constant armored moves. He has the abilities of both Shao Kahn and Darkseid, with most of his most powerful attacks coming from Shao Kahn, such as the hammer swings and shoulder charge. Once he's defeated, the two villains are separated, with Darkseid being imprisoned in the Netherrealm and Shao Kahn in the Phantom Zone. Dark Kahn is a pretty ridiculous concept with a fairly generic design that I feel they could have done a lot more with. However, his boss fight is one of the more fair in the Mortal Kombat series, and he certainly has that final boss aura for him. It'd be hard not to considering who he's comprised of. Now we move on to the heavy hitters, the top 5, starting with Blaze, who was famously final boss in Mortal Kombat Armageddon. Blaze was created by Delia to oversee the fighters in all the realms, and when their combined power becomes a threat to all of existence, Blaze will awaken Taven and Dagon to stop Armageddon. However, Blaze was bound by magic to protect the Great Dragon Egg, and by the time he is freed, the powers of the fighters have already reached a dangerous level, and Dagon had been awakened prematurely. Blaze would awaken Taven, and in order to stop Armageddon, Taven would have to beat Blaze atop the Pyramid of Argus, and this is where the final boss takes place. Blaze is extremely difficult to beat, as I would know, as I fought him many times throughout this channel's history for my Creative Fighter series. If he touches you, good luck winning the round. Standing in front of him and trying to fight him normally isn't going to do the trick if you're not ridiculously good at this game. He has an unblockable roll move, he can heal himself, teleport, hit you with this long, damaging overhand combination. It's a long day fighting Blaze. As a boss overall, I really like Blaze. His design is one of, if not the most iconic thing about Armageddon. I hate fighting him, but he's the final boss, so it's not the biggest deal. And I think his story is quite underrated, since most people just act like he's a nobody. But I can't put him above some of the OG iconic villains, one of which being our next boss, the first boss to be the final challenge in multiple games, Shinnok, who was the final boss of Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero, Mortal Kombat 4, and Mortal Kombat X. Shinnok was formerly an elder god who was overtaken by corruption and a desire to rule over the realms, starting with Earthrealm. He would be stopped by the elemental gods, notably Raiden and Fujin, and cast to the Netherrealm. There, he would overthrow Lucifer as the ruler and meet a sorcerer by the name of Quan Chi, who became his second in command. Together, they re-began his journey to take over Earthrealm. They devised a plan to retrieve Shinnok's amulet, a powerful talisman capable of imprisonment and death, which was stolen and locked away in the Temple of Elements. Their plan was to have legendary assassin Sub-Zero take the amulet, which he is successful in. However, Sub-Zero is then sent by Raiden to take back the amulet, leading to the final boss between him and Shinnok in Mythologies. This is Sub-Zero Mythologies, so this boss fight is actually just the worst thing ever. Shinnok summons a force field to protect himself from your attacks, and then just spams you with his energy blast. Thankfully, you don't have to beat this boss by depleting its health bar, but instead just taking one moment to freeze him and then taking the amulet off of him. He will then turn into a giant monster, so you run away back to Earthrealm through a portal. However, this amulet is revealed to be a fake, and the real one is held by Quan Chi. Years later, after multiple tournaments and invasions by Shao Kahn, Shinnok makes his attempt on Earthrealm during the events of Mortal Kombat 4. First, he attacks Earthrealm's ally, Edenia, with the help of Tanya. The Earthrealmers make their attempt to save Edenia, but are unsuccessful and retreat back to Earthrealm, where Shinnok makes his attack. Shinnok in MK4 is quite an easy boss fight. This is the first boss of the mainline Mortal Kombat games that didn't have that larger-than-life aura and really just felt like another character, emboldened by the fact that he was also just a regular playable fighter on the roster. This criticism would be heard nearly 20 years later, but better late than never, when Shinnok returns as the final boss of Mortal Kombat X, but this time in the form of corrupted Shinnok. In the new rebooted timeline, the events of MK4 still kinda happen, but mostly off-screen and with the deaths of many characters are very different. At the beginning of Mortal Kombat X, Johnny Cage is the one to defeat Shinnok, and the fallen Elder God is imprisoned in his own amulet. 2.5 decades later, Shinnok would be freed by the late Quan Chi. He would then immediately attack Earth's life force, the Jinsei, and corrupt it. He would then absorb that corrupted power, turning him into corrupted Shinnok, who people have theorized could be the same monster form we saw in Mortal Kombat Mythologies. Corrupted Shinnok is very annoying. Not quite the same level of pure cheapness as older bosses, but still has that same very spammy and powerful attacks, such as his stomach blast, ground smash, and throw. Many of these moves being either unblockable or armored. Now, if you know me, you'd know that I am not the biggest fan of Shinnok. He just doesn't have that same intimidation factor, he's fairly uninteresting in his personality and powers, and he really has nothing we haven't seen before. I really did consider maybe putting Blaze above him, but I think his pure quantity of how prevalent he's been just about beats out what Blaze has done. Plus, Shinnok moving forward has a lot more potential than Blaze, who really only works as a one and done. On to the top 3, I have the Dragon King taking the bronze medal. Onaga has only been final boss in one game, Mortal Kombat Deception, but that should really change at some point. Millennia ago, Onaga was the ruler of Outworld and leader of the most fierce army in all the realms. He had a mission to preserve the Great Dragon Egg, believing its blood would give him eternal life. Before achieving this goal, however, he was poisoned by his apprentice, Shao Kahn, and his army was left mummified and dormant. Centuries later, through an avatar named Damashi, Onaga, from beyond death, guided a warrior named Shujinko to collect the Kamidogu under the guise of serving the Elder Gods. Meanwhile, the Great Dragon Egg remained guarded by Blaze, as I mentioned earlier. However, during Deadly Alliance, the vampire Natara manipulated Reptile into accessing the egg's chamber. When the egg hatched, its energy transformed Reptile into a vessel for Onaga, resurrecting the Dragon King. He had figured out the key to immortality using the Kamidogu collected by Shujinko. Around this time, Quan Chi and Shang Tsung also resurrected Onaga's army to conquer the realms. Raiden would attempt to stop them, but the newly reborn Onaga would make them join forces. Raiden's final act of self-destruction destroyed the army, but failed to harm Onaga, who would also take Shinnok's amulet after Quan Chi's death. At this point, Shujinko had realized he fucked up, and sought to undo the chaos he had caused by rallying warriors across the realms. After absorbing their fighting techniques, he confronted Onaga directly, leading to the final boss fight. Onaga is fairly difficult, but not on the level of a Blaze from Armageddon. His moves are a lot less cheap, however still powerful. He can breathe fire, blast wind from his wings, and is also immune to projectiles. However, what truly stops him from being super hard are the Kamidogu around the arena that will weaken and stun him. Onaga is a legend, and the only thing holding him back is his lack of prevalence within these games. He's intimidating, his story and plan is fun and thought out, and his boss fight is tough without being super annoying. A modern story with Onaga, if they don't screw it up, big if, could be amazing, but they just don't want to for some reason. They want to tease the fans and get us excited, but ultimately not deliver, which is a shame. Now we're down to the last 2, and I think you guys all knew who would be the 2 best bosses when you clicked on this video, but who is second place? Well, it was super close, but I have Shang Tsung in my number 2 spot. Shang Tsung has been the final boss of 4 Mortal Kombat games: Mortal Kombat 1992, Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, Mortal Kombat 11 Aftermath, and Mortal Kombat 1. Long ago, Shang Tsung was the champion of Mortal Kombat, winning many tournaments in a row for the side of Outworld, allowing him to live for many years without aging. However, he would be defeated by the Shaolin monk Kung Lao, now known as the Great Kung Lao. In the next tournament, Shang Tsung would introduce his new champion, the one he believed could defeat Kung Lao, the Prince of the Shokan, Goro, and he would fulfill his purpose. For 9 tournaments in a row, Goro would rule in Mortal Kombat without competition, but for the 10th tournament, with victory in arm's reach, Goro would be defeated by Liu Kang. In a last-ditch effort to thwart the Earthrealmers, Shang Tsung would flee, taking down the spell holding together the island the tournament took place on, but Liu Kang would catch up, and hence the boss battle. Shang Tsung was definitely a tough test, with the ability to morph into all the fighters you've took down thus far, and constant fireballs. But he was more than overshadowed by the difficulty of the previous fight against Goro, which makes sense lore-wise, but just a bit strange for the final boss fight. Years later, after Shao Kahn's defeats at the hands of Liu Kang, Shang Tsung would develop an alliance with fellow sorcerer Quan Chi. Together, they aimed to resurrect Onaga's legendary dragon army, but first, they had to get rid of their greatest threats, Liu Kang and Shao Kahn. And they were successful. Furthermore, the Deadly Alliance also took down several Earthrealm warriors. As for the boss fight, they are supposed to be a team, but in the arcade mode of Deadly Alliance, you just fight them one-on-one, back-to-back, with Shang Tsung being the true final boss of the game. And he's pretty much just a regular fight, but with slightly harder AI. No ridiculous damage, spam, or unblockable attacks. The next time Shang Tsung shows up as the final boss is after the timeline gets rebooted at the hand of Raiden. Shang Tsung refuses to assist Chronica with her quest to recreate the timeline in her image, and she casts him to the void. This makes you question why she didn't just do this to everyone who opposed her, but that's besides the point. Shang Tsung is released from the void with Chronica's defeat when Liu Kang attempts to start his new timeline. However, he is attempting to do so without Chronica's crown, so Liu Kang sends Shang Tsung, Fujin, and Nightwolf back into the timeline to retrieve the past version of it. But during this quest, Shang Tsung puts the pieces in place for his betrayal, including resurrecting the secretly evil Sindel, who teams up with Shao Kahn to destroy the Earthrealm forces from the inside. Shang Tsung gets his hands on the crown and defeats everyone: Raiden, Fujin, Shao Kahn, Sindel, and Chronica herself. Shang Tsung attempts to restart time and create his new era, but Liu Kang shows up to stop him for the final battle. Once again, this is pretty much just a regular fight you'd have with Shang Tsung, whether it was the final one or not. At this point, the timeline splits, with one version of events having Liu Kang win and the other having Shang Tsung be victorious. This Shang Tsung learns of Liu Kang's timeline and aims to invade and merge it with his own, manipulating that timeline Shang Tsung into giving him access to Emperor Ying's dragon army. Liu Kang, however, manages to find other titans from the various timelines across the multiverse to help battle against Shang Tsung, who has his own army of dark titans, including Quan Chi, reforming the Deadly Alliance for the final fight. In this fight, Shang Tsung has a Quan Chi cameo, but other than that, it's a normal battle with Shang Tsung, as it has been the past few times. And that'll do it for the soul-sucking sorcerer. Obviously, Shang Tsung is iconic, and as a character, I personally like him the best. But keeping it objective, as a boss, he doesn't have the same intimidation factor, strength, and just aura as Shao Kahn, my number one pick for the best final boss in all of Mortal Kombat. He has been final boss in Mortal Kombat 2, Mortal Kombat 3, Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks, and Mortal Kombat 9. After the events of the Mortal Kombat 1992 tournament, Shao Kahn requests a tournament to be held in Outworld instead, giving him home field advantage. Somehow, he's also able to make himself the final challenge, despite the fact that gods aren't supposed to be able to participate in Mortal Kombat, hence why Raiden hasn't joined, but oh well. Liu Kang, as he did before, fights through everyone put in front of him and gets to that final boss. MK2's Shao Kahn fight is notoriously difficult, especially with the game's busted predictive AI. He constantly does his shoulder and knee charge, smashes you over the head with his hammer, and has a projectile with his spear throw. His damage is also insane, able to deplete your health bar with 3 or 4 good hits. He also taunts you throughout the match, which is just demoralizing. After losing this fight to Liu Kang, Shao Kahn comes up with a plan to invade Earthrealm by resurrecting his fallen wife and moving there to claim her. This begins the merger into Outworld, and Shao creates a Soulnado to steal the souls of millions in Earthrealm. However, a familiar face rises through the chaos, now even more motivated by the death of his best friend Kung Lao, and I am of course talking about Liu Kang. This battle against Shao Kahn is mostly the same as before, with the only major change to his moveset being a new projectile. Other than that, the AI here is slightly more forgiving than the infamous MK2 one, but still very difficult and very cheap, and his insults here are slightly more mean than last time. Shao Kahn would also be the final boss of the spin-off game Shaolin Monks, a retelling of Mortal Kombat 2 from the perspective of Liu Kang and Kung Lao in a 3D beat-em-up style akin to early God of War. The two monks would fight through many levels, aiming to get to Shang Tsung, but they are unaware of the true threat that lies ahead until they arrive at the Colosseum to face Shao Kahn. This is another very tough battle, as always with Shao Kahn, especially with his rigidness against attacks that would usually put other opponents down. He also gets tougher as it goes, with Shao Kahn losing his mask, but gaining his iconic hammer. It doesn't help that if you lose this fight, you're going all the way back to the beginning of that level. Before his final boss appearance thus far, we have the rebooted timeline with Mortal Kombat 9. More or less, for Shao Kahn, he goes through the same series of events here as in the first 3 games. Lose the first tournament on Shang's Island, lose the second in Outworld, and then Invasion. Where things do change are in the final battle itself, now taking place atop a roof instead of Shao's fortress, and now he faces Raiden in place of Liu Kang. Shao Kahn in MK9 very well might be both the toughest and most annoying test out of any of the bosses on this list. The only reason many are able to beat him is if they get a luckily timed taunt. Many of his attacks have ridiculous armor, he has an unblockable hammer toss, a ground and air shoulder charge, and an extremely powerful X-ray that takes out 2/3 of your health. And that'll do it for Shao Kahn. MK9 was his last time as final boss, but inevitably he will be again. Out of all, not just Mortal Kombat characters, but all fighting game characters, Shao Kahn may have the most final boss aura. His design, his presence, his taunts, and just how difficult and cheap he is makes him the ultimate representative of what fighting game bosses are. Maybe not what they should be, but definitely what they are, and I think that's something to be proud of. But let me know in the comments which of these final bosses were your personal favorites, and while you're down there, make sure to check out the links in the description to my Twitch, where I will be streaming very soon, my merch store, and my other social media. Also, make sure to give this video a like to show your support, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell to know when I next upload a new video. And with that being said, that's it for this video, my fellow oddities. I'll see you next time. Thank you.